During their speeches, we all felt that establishing a bilateral civil aviation agreement is of our critical concern and is also the theme of our conference. It's also one of our top priorities. So for this panel discussion, our theme is the benefits of BASA for the industry. As you all know, that BASA is one high-level document which includes airworthiness certification, maintenance, personnel licensing, and other comprehensive management issues. For myself, I basically focus on bilateral airworthiness certification. According to Annex 8 of the ICAO, the registered countries of airworthiness will maximize its confidence to the state of the country to reduce unnecessary duplication. This is our main concern, and it's also where it plays a role. China and EU have made positive cooperations in bilateral airworthiness certification. There is a solid foundation for our cooperation. This is the cooperation in airworthiness is also a critical part of our bilateral civil aviation cooperation. Before the panel discussion starts, I'm going to invite all the panelists on the stage to introduce yourself to the audience so that during the Q&A session, they can know who to ask. So first, let's have Mr. Lukin, head of unit of DG Move, to introduce yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joachim Lücking and I'm the head of unit for aviation safety in DG Move of the European Commission.
Please.
My name is Pekka Henttu. I'm Director General of Aviation within Finnish Transport Safety Agency. And also I'm working as a chairman of EASA Management Board.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Trevor Woods. I'm the Certification Director of EASA.
大家早上好，我叫王金玲。
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Wang Jingling from the Deputy Director of Airworthiness Department of CAAC.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. CEO of ATR, the world's leading regional aircraft manufacturer, a partnership between Airbus and Leonardo of Italy.
大家早上好，我叫
Good morning, I'm Pang Zhen, President of Civil Aircraft of AVIC. Good morning. I'm the General Manager of Jiatai AVIC. Thank you all the guests for your brief introduction. If you're interested, you can refer to the brochure of the conference. All the panelists here today are well-known and experienced industrial leaders. They are well established in their own field. So please refer to the conference brochure for further material, further information. Next, I'm going to talk about my own views of the benefits of BASA and the progress of our current cooperation with the EU. My introduction consists of three parts. My introduction includes three parts. First, benefits of strengthening cooperation between China and Europe. Second, current situations in a cooperation on safety issues between China and the EU in civil aviation. Third is the progress we have made so far. First, I want to say that one of the benefits of the BASA is to enhancing mutual trust. This is the foundation for the bilateral air aviation safety. Second is to expand aero products exchanges between China and Europe. Both sides have opened doors for the communication of their aero products and achieved mutual recognition. The third is to enhance aviation safety and improve the development air transport. This is based on the fact that the country of design will assure the airworthiness of the aero products so that other countries will have a good awareness of the aero products. The fourth is to increase the efficiency of airworthiness and reduce the duplicate work. Fifth is to increase the information exchange and cooperation in aero products, type design, sustained airworthiness and operations so that we can make progress together.
In the second part of my opening remarks, I'd like to give you some introductory remarks on the current situation we are in. China now is one of the most important markets of civil aviation products for Europe. As far as I know, in terms of transport aircrafts, among it, 1/4 of the delivery is in the Chinese market. So every year we've got a lot of European products into the Chinese market. The transport aircraft, among all the transport aircraft in China's fleet, about 1,400 transport aircrafts are from Europe and 650 general aviation aircrafts are made in Europe. So it accounts for a large portion in our fleet. And the globalization trend against this backdrop, we've seen international collaboration in the design and manufacturing and production of aircrafts. In a sense that, for example, first of all, Airbus set up the Airbus final assembly line in Tianjin, and then we'll have the completion delivery center. And also, Austrian Diamond now has a assembly line of DA40 in Shandong province, and we've got another 2 projects to be approved very soon. One is an Austrian Diamond in Wuhu, Anhui province, setting up in some assembly line, and another is Teklan in Shenyang in Liaoning province in China. They are also going to set up a assembly line. So this is very briefly what is now happening on the ground. And next, the progress we've made on the aviation safety agreement between China and Europe. In 2013, the CAAC, the administration Li, and the DG Move signed a letter of intent on civil aviation cooperation. That meant the start of the collaboration between the two sides. In 2015, the two sides agreed upon the overall roadmap on aviation safety cooperation and the technical roadmap related to confidence-building activities. Now, in confidence-building activities, there's two things. One is the Track 1 review system, and the other Track 2 is the aviation products technical display. So there are two tracks. For Track 1, we've completed most of the work, and for the Track 2 technical assessment, we are still underway. We've now launched the bilateral safety agreement, the text review of the agreement. We've completed 2 rounds, and in June we are going to do the 3rd round of the negotiation on the text. Next, the two sides will, according to the roadmap, continue with our work. I believe that the two sides will continue to work closely and to have a broadened horizon and have a long-term planning and continue with our pragmatic manner to make sure that we'll sign the agreement and to an early date and to increase our mutual trust and confidence to make sure that we'll have more collaboration in the products and in other areas to achieve a win-win outcome. Now that concludes my very brief introduction as well as a review of what has happened in the area. Now I'd like to give the floor to all the guest speakers, to all the panels on the stage to share with us their views on the benefits of a BASA. Now I'd like first of all to give the floor to Mr. Lukin, Head of Unit of Aviation Safety of DG Move. He's going to give us an introduction from the EU side on BASA, what is the benefits of BASA on EU side, as well as EU's experience of having a BASA with other European countries. The second part of Mr. Lukin's speech, he's going to be talking about an international aviation safety agreement. CAAC-EASA and DG Move, how do they work together to press the work in this area? Mr. Lukin, please, the floor is yours.
Well, dear Chief Engineer Yin, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to be here today and to engage with you all in the discussion on the benefits of bilateral aviation safety agreements, or BASAs for short. To understand the benefits of such agreements, it is important to understand why such agreements are pursued by the European Union. As you all know, civil aviation is a heavily regulated activity because of its potential impact on the safety of passengers and people on the ground. This is particularly true for the regulation of airworthiness and continued oversight of aircraft and components fitted thereon, including that of organizations and personnel involved in the design, manufacture, maintenance of operations. In these fields, states have developed comprehensive systems of regulations and certification. They ensure that no aircraft can fly, no component can be fitted on them unless they have been certified, and traceability is ensured to follow up their continued airworthiness, as well as aptitude for the persons operating such aircrafts. In the same vein, organizations in charge of the design, manufacture, maintenance, and operation of such products are subject to approvals or inspection. The European Union framework set up in 2002 to do this established a common safety set of rules for civil aviation and created the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. These rules, whilst focusing on the key element of ensuring a high level of safety protection, also addressed two other key elements that are important to note in the context of our discussions today. First, the facilitation of the free movement of goods, persons, and organizations. And second, the promotion of cooperation with third countries. In other words, with the adoption of the common rules on civil aviation safety and the establishment of EASA, the EU has achieved internal harmonization in the fields covered by these common rules. This has facilitated the removal of technical obstacles to trade. This is an ambition that we seek to establish also with those strategic partners with whom we negotiate BASAs. Trade in aeronautical products needs a degree of harmonization to avoid conflicting requirements when dealing with different states to the extent that this is possible. The ICAO system set in place by the Chicago Convention sets general objectives in that regard, but leaves a large margin of discretion to contracting states as to the detailed regulatory means. As a consequence, states have relatively different regulatory systems, and certificates, approvals, and licenses issued by one state are not automatically showing compliance with requirements of another state. And this is where the first benefit of a BASA comes to light. Can I have my second slide, please?
Yeah.
I don't have the...
Okay. You can combine the answer.
I'm sorry? No.
Okay.
Well, a BASA, from an EU perspective, is an international treaty between the EU and a third country that constitutes a legal instrument that removes unnecessary duplicative oversight activities while improving safety. The conclusion of such an agreement supposes sufficient trust in and equivalence of respective rules and procedures, but not full harmonization. It is based on systems that produce equivalent results, though procedures may be different. The overall objective is to formalize cooperation in the aviation safety domain between the signatories to such an agreement. Such agreements should in particular allow for the reciprocal acceptance and issuance of approvals by either party's regulatory authorities based on the reliance and equivalency of the other party. This creates significant procedural efficiency gains in terms of reducing procedural and administrative efforts, in optimizing the use and management of resources, and in reducing cost to industry. The existence of a BASA also facilitates the exchange of information between the parties based on legally binding rules. Increased reliance on and transparency as regards the respective parties' safety systems, as well as legal certainty brought about by such agreements, creates a more favorable trading environment. Ultimately, this is in the interest of industry impacted by the agreement, as it enables market access. As Chief Engineer Yin mentioned in his opening remarks, we are now engaged in negotiating a future BASA between the EU and China. The reasoning and processes that I have highlighted here have all been part of the process which have led to the launch of these negotiations. But I should also mention that a very significant factor in this has been the influence of the benefits that has been derived from similar agreements that the EU already has in place with the United States, Canada, and Brazil. That being said, we are also mindful that variances may exist between states and their respective regulatory systems, and these differences have an impact on the format and content of such agreements. Whereas there is a common stream throughout the various BASAs that have been concluded over the time, it cannot and should not be seen from the perspective of a one-size-fits-all. These are bilateral agreements between partners who jointly consider and decide on factors that contribute to the process of establishing the relationship between them in the format of a BASA. The next slide, please. So, how do DG MOVE and EASA work together in the context of such agreements? The negotiation and subsequent implementation of a BASA involves, in the EU context, a close collaboration between the political level, that is the European Commission, DG Move, and the technical level at EASA. While this can be difficult to describe, I believe the image on the slide says it all, i.e. the overall responsibility for the negotiations and implementation of the BASA lies with the Commission, with the technical support of EASA, whereas the responsibility for applying and implementing the agreement in practical terms lies with EASA, with the support of the Commission if and when necessary. EASA notably provides its technical expertise to help us understand the Chinese regulatory system and to conduct the confidence-building activities foreseen in the technical roadmap. As the Chief Engineer mentioned, we are now on a good track to concluding the BASA negotiations, and overall I'm very confident that at the end of the negotiations we will find the best possible solution to serve the interests of both China and the European Union in order to open up a new area of cooperation in aviation safety. Thank you, Shei.
好，谢谢吕金先生。
Thank you, Mr. Lu Qing, for your remarks. You just gave us an introduction from the EU's perspective, where we are in our negotiation, as well as what you have done in terms of having a BASA with other countries. And also you talked about your experience from the EU side, and you also talked about your collaboration between the Commission and EASA. I believe that we have a very general picture of what you've been doing currently. And also on the stage, we have a representative of Civil Aviation of the Finnish Transport Safety Agency, Mr. Hentu, Director General of Civil Aviation of the Finnish Transport Safety Agency and Chairman of the EASA Management Board. I believe that you are all very interested in what Mr. Hendu's major responsibility as well, and also he's the chairman of the EASA Management Board, so probably you will have questions to him. For example, as the chairman of the management board, what is your responsibility? What is the main content of your work? So I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Hendu to give us a general introduction. And I also want, if I may, Mr. Hendu to introduce to us how Finnish Transport Safety Agency collaborate with EASA and how you collaborate with other countries in terms of setting up a BASA. How you collaborate the aviation industry and the manufacturing industry, how to maximize your achievements, your profits. Thank you.
Let's say very good topics you mentioned from my point of view. I would say that if the air transport system is not safe, the public is not interested to travel by air as much as they could. We are working to maintain the confidence of the public. In order to maintain the existing high level of safety and even to further improve it in all conditions, covering also the growth conditions which we have now. We have continuously to improve our capabilities to manage the risks. We, the national authorities, as well European Commission, we need EASA to work for us. It's very much question how EASA could serve the national authorities so that we can continuously improve our performance. I'm discussing continuously with the Executive Director Patrick Key about this, how we can serve the states. As an outcome, we are further developing the partnership platform for the cooperation between EASA and the national CAAs, and also between the CAAs. As a chair of management board, I'm discussing quite a lot about the strategic issues with EASA and also with European Commission. What kind of working methods, what kind of regulation we should have for the future in order to avoid overregulation and to enable the implementation of new technology, to enable the development of the aviation sector. As a chair, I am paying special attention to maintain a good spirit in the management board meetings. With a good spirit, we are much more capable to make decisions and compromised decisions when needed. It is question about the efficiency of the management board to have a good spirit in there. If the board is not efficient, it is not at all a good sign for the agency itself. All of us, EASA member states, EASA, European Commission, are working on partnership basis for the benefit of the national CAAs, for the benefit of aviation industry, and finally for the benefit of traveling public. I'm not speaking about those governance activities which we, with my management board, what we are doing. No one is interested in those. But anyway, the safety is in our focus. So, how does our organization, Finnish Transport Safety Agency, TRAFI, work with EASA? Let's say, on Monday, we did send a letter to EASA proposing a new rulemaking activity to make benefit for new technology. Today, there will be a telephone conference with a working group, and they are dealing with inspector qualifications. Our expert, he has prepared some proposals for that process. Also, let's say, the support from EASA side, which they are giving in the workshops and different kind of seminars and training sessions, they are very remarkable for us. Also, EASA people, they are visiting in Finland. Also, Mr. Patrick Key is visiting and meeting the stakeholders. That is very valuable for us. A couple of weeks ago, we revised our safety plan. That was more or less based on the European Aviation Safety Plan. It was the basis for our national safety plan, and we added our national, let's say, topics in addition to the European plan. And we are also different kind of cooperation activities. For example, next November, in cooperation with EASA, we will arrange international high-level conference on drones. That is the way how we are working in close partnership. So, the BASA. How does TRAFI, Finnish Aviation Safety Agency, what do we think about this? At the first beginning, I would like to say that we are very much in favor having this kind of agreement as a European-wide agreement with China. Also, we would like to see in the future much more annexes attached to the agreement, not only the production of aviation, but also, for example, flight standards and so on. Preparing that kind of agreement, it's a very positive learning process for all of us. Learning the partners' regulation, learning the way of working, processes, and so on. We can realize that the same safety level can be achieved in different ways. For the industry as well, for us as a regulator, the agreement simplifies the business and makes it more predictable. Let's assume that one of our airplanes, they have an incident here in China airspace. If we have that kind of agreement plus relevant annex for that, we know exactly what our colleagues here in CAAC, what they are doing, and they know what we are doing. It simplifies a lot, and I would say at the final end for the benefit of safety. We have learned that a good cooperation in different levels is important fuel for the aviation, in addition to kerosene, tea and coffee. The new stage of cooperation on this level, what we are speaking here now, is very much welcome to our industry and as well traffic. So thank you.
好，谢谢亨杜先生的介绍。
Thank you, Mr. Handu, for your introduction. In your speech, you talked about you are very looking forward to the signing of BASA between China and the EU, and from the EU's perspective, you also talked about from a member state perspective, why it is necessary to have a BASA. As you said, in the EU framework, as a member state, you'll be able to have all kinds of support and collaboration and benefits from BASA to facilitate, for example, the aviation industry as a whole and your manufacturing as well. Under the BASA, EU members and, for example, China in the future will also benefit from it. It will facilitate the exchange of products, the manufacturing of products, and the exchanges of different kinds. Among our panels here on the stage too, we have got Mr. Woods, Certification Director of Certification Directorate of EASA. Signing BASA and annex. After that, we have an implementation text, TIP. Now, the work on TIP is under the EASA framework. It is in the responsibility of EASA. So in this slide, I'd like to invite Mr. Woods to talk about the TIP and the TIP. How does a TIP improve itself and enhance itself? And EASA and CAAC, between us, the TIP, what is your expectation of setting up the TIP between our side? And with the TIP, what benefits does it bring? So I'd like to give the floor now to Mr. Woods.
Chief Engineer Yin, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great opportunity to speak to you because many of you will be the people implementing the BASA and the technical implementation procedures. It's going to really set out the way that you do business in the future. So thank you for your time this morning. I would just like to start off by going back to Mr. Lukin's slide, one of his slides, if I can have the next slide, please, the one with the pyramid. And you can see there that the agreement is implemented through annexes, which in turn are implemented by the technical implementation procedures. And that's what I'm highlighting here and going to explain a bit about how that will work and our expectations. The starting point to develop the technical implementation procedures is really building on the Track 1 and the Track 2 work that has taken place, and also the experience we've had working together so far. And we do have a lot of experience because, for one thing, CAAC have validated a lot of EU products. I understand and have added up, that's 87 EU product types, which is really impressive. So there's already a lot of experience to build on. Who writes between the technical agents of the authorities. So we'll work together and form a working group and develop the tip. What I'd like to do is just talk about an example of how the tip fits in relation to the BASA and the annexes. So if I may have the next slide. It may be difficult to read there, but let's take an example where the agreement might say that we can accept each other's certificates. This is a high-level principle and the basis for now what we can do. In the annex, then it may say how we would set out the certification basis for an aircraft product, and that is to support us accepting each other's certificates. Then in the technical procedures, it's going to really explain how you apply for a certification, what kind of forms you have to fill in, how the authorities will work together to establish which areas they're going to investigate, what will be the level of involvement of each of the authorities. So it really is working from a very high level down to the technical implementation procedures, very detailed work. And we'd expect the technical implementation procedures to come to something like 100 pages in that order. And it's really something you'll have to follow. If you want to make an application, you need to have a look at that and really understand it. Next slide. So we'll start with an initial issue of the tip after we have established that. And what I can tell you, yesterday we had a really good discussion, and through that we agreed that we would start working on the tip now, even before we finalised the annex and the agreement. We clearly need to know what's in the annex, and we may have to adjust what we write in the tip as the annex develops towards finalisation. But this is going to get us ahead of time and save us some time after the BASA is signed. So as we start to implement the arrangements and the tip, we're going to work together, and it's going to be a great learning experience. And I've heard the word, especially from Mr. Hololai, friendship. I think this is very important as well. We'll learn to work with each other and learn how to improve. So there'll be a need to amend the tip as we learn. And also, if the annexes are amended, that will have a knock-on effect to amend the tip in turn. Now, many of you from industry will have a great interest in what's in the tip and how it evolves in the future. So we're really open to hear the priorities and views from industry, and those inputs could quite easily have an impact on future tip amendments. There may be other inputs, unexpected inputs. For example, if there's an accident somewhere, there may be recommendations, and that could result in us amending the tip. And I think through experience with other bilaterals, what we've seen is we start with a fairly prescriptive arrangement, and as we learn from experience from each other, we tend to amend the tip to a more risk-based, performance-based approach. So I would expect to see that in the future. Something that's really important is that as we implement the tip and changes, that we also make sure that people are trained ahead of time to understand what is in there and what they need to do to implement it. And that's for the authorities and for industry as well. If I can have the next slide, please. So we all may have great expectations of the implementation procedures. They may be different expectations, but the ones that I would like to highlight, I think the first one is about the use of our resources. These procedures really need to target the use of our resources to best effect for safety. And for the benefit of industry, they really need to eliminate or to reduce, I think we can never eliminate totally, but to reduce duplicated effort in showing compliance to the two authorities. And there's really a great scope through the TIP to achieve this. The procedures really set out expectations and predictability as to how we're working. And I think this is very important for the industry to know exactly how they're going to manage their programs and to reduce the number of unexpected issues that arise during the process. And this enables better planning for industry and the authorities. And of course, when things and issues crop up unexpectedly, it has an impact on other programs as well. So the more we can plan, the more certainty and clarity we have, the better for all. And something that I'd also like to mention here is quite often when we certificate or validate aircraft or products, it's very easy to mix up compliance demonstration with the need to learn. Aviation is all about new technology. We're always pushing the boundaries. So we're always learning. Now, there is a difference between showing compliance with rules and learning. So sometimes we have to, I think, step back and ask, are we asking these questions in order to check compliance is demonstrated or to increase our learning? And this is something I think we may have a discussion as we develop the TIP. So, and the other point I'd just like to make is, what is validation? I think people have different ideas as well about that. I think it's important to remember we're validating the work that the certificating authority did to certificate the aircraft. And so we should be looking at that first. When we go to the manufacturer, that is as a sample of what the certificating authority did. So I think we need to bear that in mind as we develop the TIP as well. If I can have the next slide. So the expectations and the benefits are probably very similar. The first benefit is that we're going to develop a really good and productive working relationship. We've already been doing that here today. We had some meetings earlier in the week, and really I've seen some fantastic discussions, open discussions between CAAC and the EU agencies. It's going to facilitate an open exchange of information, and that really is important when we have critical issues. And Pekka mentioned the possibility, if there's an incident, we need to respond to that. And sometimes you have to respond very quickly, and the more trust, the better working relationship you have. You know exactly who to talk to get the information, to come to an agreement very quickly. And that's one of the real benefits from the technical implementation procedures, if we get it right, and the relationship that we're developing. Of course, as we work together, we're going to exchange and develop best practice between each other, and that's going to help us converge on our oversight methods. And that's good for everyone, because one standard, one working method is good for efficiency, but it's good for clarity, and that's good for safety. I think that one of the biggest benefits to the industry is certainty on time of the validation process and entry into service. Delays are very expensive and disruptive to the industry, not just to the manufacturers, but the operators as well. So this is one of the big benefits from clarity through the procedures. But I think for me, the most important benefit is an equal and high level of safety across between the EU and China. Thank you.
好，谢谢乌兹先生。
Thank you, Mr. Wood, for your introduction. TIP is indeed a good guide to both the regulators and the industry to conduct a more effective and efficient exchanges. Currently, both sides are engaged fully in consulting the TIP implementation. In terms of the import-export aero products, TIP will become increasingly important and significant. So we hope greater success in the consultation of TIP, and that will lead to the final signing of the agreement. We also have here Ms. Wang, who is the Deputy Director General of Aircraft Airworthiness Certification Department of CAAC. She has been working very hard in expanding China's cooperation with other partners in terms of certifying airworthiness. So she has a lot of experience. So now it's my pleasure to invite Deputy Director General Wang to say a few words about the bilateral airworthiness certification and the achievement made. She perhaps could also mention how CAAC is enhancing the ability of airworthiness certification. Thank you. We're talking about BASA. So our airworthiness certification is an important component of BASA. This year, it is already 30 years since we started the airworthiness work. From the very beginning, because of the international nature of air traffic, air aviation, we have never stopped trying to improve our airworthiness capacity, airworthiness certification capacity. You can see that we have bilateral technical arrangement or agreements in terms of 99 such agreements with more than 31 countries and regions. We also have a lot of working arrangement with EASA regarding Airbus commercial airliner, and Airbus helicopters. Now, these 99 agreements, among these 99 agreements, 18 apply to the Chinese air products that are exported to the international market. In addition, 9 such agreements service the bilateral exchanges of aero products. For instance, with the US and Russian, Brazil, Canada, New Zealand, and these apply to the bilateral exchange of products. Such agreement, the signature of such agreement, signing of such agreement, play a great role in promoting the bilateral exchanges and also help to enhance the safety. This is the current status. The next slide, please. What's the purpose and significance of such cooperation? My colleagues already talked about the purpose and the meaning of such cooperation, and I agree to all of them. After many years' experience in bilateral cooperation in airworthiness certification, I believe this arrangement is a promise by all authorities. It helps increase the confidence of the public in international aviation and in guarantee the air aviation safety as well as promote smooth exchanges of products, thus saving energy, saving resources, and avoiding redundancy in the manufacturing process. Next slide, please. Earlier, Mr. Ying asked me to say a few words about our capacity building in airworthiness certification. Earlier, some of my colleagues mentioned that such bilateral cooperation will not only benefit manufacturers, uh, actually regulators also benefit from it because through this we learn from each other and enhance our understanding, mutual understanding, and we also enhance and upgrade our regulatory procedures. During such cooperation with other authorities, CAAC has learned a lot, and we also have improved along the way. We're always learning the new good practices from other authorities. In connection with the Chinese development, China's CAAC has also formulated our departmental 13 5-year plan. We try to make China's airworthiness certification will be in closer integrated into the international practice. So that's what we aim at during the 13th 5-year plan. According to our plan, we are going to work in the following 5 ways. First is to study better technology in airworthiness certification. Secondly, we'll reform the agency. Thirdly, we will improve the procedures. The fourth, we are going to train better our personnel. And lastly, together with today's team, we are going to make our airworthiness certification process more international. In other words, to integrate it into international practice. Currently, we've already achieved preliminary successes. First of all, organizationally speaking, we have now vertical management. Our division of labor is clearer at each level, and it's more efficient. In international cooperation, our achievement reflects on our exchanges. We are actively engaged in cooperation with EASA and FA, and to convey what we learned to our industry in China. Thank you, Deputy Director Wang. And that also helps us understand the CAAC's capacity of airworthiness certification. CAAC's airworthiness certification goes step in step with the development of the China aero industry. And of course, there's still room for improvement. China's civil aviation is undergoing rapid development. And we have heard from China's industry representative, Mr. He Dongfeng from CAAC. And of course, there are other industrial leaders who are working very hard too. CAC will continue such cooperation with our product manufacturers and also cooperate with the international partners, including EU. We've heard our guests talk about the benefits brought by BASA. And you have noticed that earlier speakers are all from authorities. Well, that's not enough. If only the authorities say that BASA is good, we have to hear from our industry representatives. So let's hear from the industry representative. And it's my pleasure to invite, first of all, the Chief Executive Officer of ATR, Mr. Christian Sharia. And I'd like to know how ATR cooperates with international customers and authorities, whether this cooperation contributes to the international success of your company. What are the expectations of ATR regarding the Chinese market? Now, the floor is yours, Christine Scherer.
Thank you, Chief Engineer Yin. And thank you also to the leadership of CAAC, of DG Move and EASA, not just for giving us the opportunity to express the industry's view, but also for your very diligent, tough, but diligent oversight and in support to industry. Chief Engineer Yin, I'll answer your question with pleasure. But first, as an aircraft manufacturer, I cannot resist the temptation of showing you some pictures to explain who we are as ATR. ATR, as I mentioned before, is a joint venture between Airbus and Leonardo. Leonardo is the Italian aerospace and defense conglomerate, and Airbus, I believe, needs no introduction. We're a Toulouse, France-based company. And to use an analogy with the IT technology, I think we can proudly say that we have Airbus inside because we are located right at the heart of Airbus country. We say humbly, hopefully, the world's leading regional aircraft manufacturer and certainly the world's leading turboprop manufacturer. Our market share in the turboprop segment is an unequaled roughly 75% over the years. But if you combine all regional aircraft, 90 seats or less, our global market share of the years is at 35%. More importantly, for the purpose of the discussion we're having today, our aircraft are flying with 200 operators around the world in about 100 countries and are therefore certificated in 100 countries around the world. We have a dispatch reliability. This is a safety conference. We have a reliability for our products around the world that is equal to that of the highest standards in the jets industry, and it stands at 99.7%. Which is quite a reason for us to be proud of, I say, because as you can imagine in the regional market, the diversity of our operators is very, very great. We have about 1,100 airplanes flying around the world. We sold about 1,500, so you can see we have nice days ahead of us. But more importantly, if we go to the next slide, we can see that the regional aviation space is far from being dormant. 1,100 ATRs flying around the world. Every year, ladies and gentlemen, 10% of that fleet gets deployed on new routes, new destinations, opening up air connectivity for populations that previously did not have regular air service. And that's really the forceful point of regional aviation. 10% of the fleet opens new destinations every year. Now, if we take a look at China, next picture, please. If we take a look at China, here we go. There's a little bit of arduous data to read, but the point we're making, without any disrespect to the great achievements that China has made in commercial aviation, the regional aviation in China is still very much underdeveloped. I say this based on the statistics that we show here on the upper left side of this chart. You see that only 14% of regional routes in China are actually operated by regional aircraft. The point is that the Chinese commercial aviation scene and transportation scene is using aircraft that are generally too large and too powerful in a way, too productive for the regional routes, which we defined as routes being less than 600 kilometers. If you compare it to more matured, let's say, and stabilized air transportation markets, say Europe, North America, or Australia, you can see the proportion of regional aircraft actually being deployed on regional routes is significantly higher. To make the same point in another statistical way, you can see that only in China the total fleet is a very, very large fleet, and by the way, we commend the extraordinary development of commercial aviation in China, but only 2.3% of the global fleet are actually regional aircraft. And this is in a country, the geography of which is akin to very, very large other countries with very remote, difficult to access communities, etc. Take a look at North America or Australia. The percentage of regional aircraft there is more like 25%, sometimes up to 30% of the global fleet. There are many, many airports in China that are currently underutilized, in particular regional airports. Up there on the upper right hand, it's a bit of a complicated metric, but the 100 least utilized airports in China, the 100 least utilized airports only account for 1.6% of the traffic. So you have 100 airports basically that account for 1.6% of traffic, telling you there is tremendous potential remaining for the development of regional aviation in this great country. I think you get the point. We at ATR are happy to serve this market. We're seeing on the next chart here some examples of regional networks. Don't go into the detail. The point really is that our regional aircraft, in particular turboprops, are the most suitable and economically optimized aircraft to serve scarcely populated areas. We're thinking, let's say, about the northwestern extremes of the country, or even Yunnan province, for example. We can serve areas with challenging terrain that make, even on short distances, ground-based transportation very onerous or impossible to achieve. Of course, we can go over water, such as over Bohai Bay, here in this region. Now, the development of regional aviation, of course, requires highest levels of technology, and I will conclude with that the ATR 72 and 42-600 series is the latest technology available in the regional aviation field. We now have a fully integrated digital avionics suite in our cockpits, enabling precision navigation into areas where ground-based navigation infrastructure perhaps does not exist, so we no longer require it. The technology that we talked about has superseded the requirement for ground-based infrastructure. We have capability through our digital cockpit
for reduced visibility flying, and therefore our aircraft are perfectly suitable to support the initiative that we applaud from the Chinese government to encourage regional transportation, air transportation, in particular also through general aviation development, which is a very, very interesting angle for us to develop our presence here in China. Now, you've asked me, Chief Yin, about ATR's view, the industry's view about bilateral agreements. Let me be very clear here. We absolutely support bilateral agreements and BASA in particular. We applaud it because it is a way to increase the efficiency of our interaction as industry with the authorities. It is a way to avoid duplication. It is a way to provide the necessary air transportation solutions to the traveling public efficiently and quicker. On the other hand, I would like to say, and here also applaud the words of pragmatism that have been expressed on the panel, but also earlier in the speeches. Pragmatism is what we need, and therefore we do encourage and we do request that our authorities in the bilateral talks don't lose sight of the realities, and therefore that things work in parallel with industrial requirements and not in sequence. I think Director Woods mentioned earlier that CAAC has already endorsed 87, I think, European aircraft products generally. Well, we'd like to humbly suggest that the Dash 600 series of the ATR be number 88. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your introduction. Though he spent a lot of time on the use of turbine airplanes, his lecture was very valuable. Before he concluded his speech, he also showed that he is hoping to see the further negotiations between China and the EU in implementing civil aviation agreements. I hope the time range will be shortened. In our negotiations, we have conducted numerous exchanges. Now we are confident that in the next round of negotiations, we will take a long-term perspective, aim at promoting sustained development and enhancing mutual trust so as to sign the bilateral agreement. Next, let's welcome Mr. Pang Zhen, President of Civil Aircraft AVIC. We want him to introduce the aero products of their company and their international cooperation. Also, we would like him to talk about the benefits from BASA. So let's welcome Mr. Pang. Good morning, everyone. AVIC in civil aviation industry started not a little later than the military aviation industry, but we have made progress within this limited period of time. Just now, ATR has introduced their products. For us, we have similar products. We have a couple of aero products operating domestically and internationally. Meanwhile, for branch route market, just now the speaker mentioned the underdevelopment of the branch routes in China. 15% of the branch routes products. So we have noticed this. We are also working on a new product, and this has entered a stage of design, and it will be put into practice later. This type of airplane is in accordance with the updated technology and the requirements of the International Civil Aviation Organization. A lot of our products are under experimentation and review. For helicopters, we have AC series, AC 311312313. These helicopters are already put into use in China. We are also working with Airbus in large volume helicopters cooperation. We call it AC352. In other fields of general aviation, for instance, we also have some products for sales. We are also working with the domestic industries and also those abroad in furthering our cooperation in designing aero products. Besides, we also have general aviation products, and I won't elaborate on that because of the time limit. Next, Mr. Wang will further explain to us. For CAAC company, we as providers provide them with a lot of spare parts and components. For Airbus, we offer them A120 components. We are an important partner. In recent years, we have seen that in the interior design of planes, we are also facing a good opportunity. We are working on designing seats, and in Europe, we've acquired a few enterprises. There was one in Australia for in terms of interior design. We are providing aero products to Airbus. AIM Altitude is also one enterprise we've acquired. Another enterprise from the UK has also merged with us. We are providing a whole set of cabinet system equipment for Airbus. This is our overall situation. Our international cooperation is also extensive, whether it be components or an overall airframe products. We are playing a role of we are working on international cooperation as partners. This is decided by the nature of the civil aviation industry. This requires an open industrial system, we always cherish opportunities to work with our partners. For the CAC, we hope to be under the supervision of EASA and make further progress. For this, the benefits of BASA, our company is very pleased to see this arrangement. We support this policy, and we are also actively participating. Over the years, we have invested heavily and human resources and equipment. We adhere to the standards of the ICAO and have established a sound and comprehensive system. We have also uh, produced some up to standards aero products by the international market. For the safety of our aero products, if we can be recognized by the international market. That's a good recognition of our capacity. And also for our products, apart from the domestic market, I hope they can also go global to the European and American market. Just now, the head of ATR said they hope to enter the Chinese market, and we hope the same way. We hope our products will go global, and also, especially, our products are hoped. It's hoped that our products can go to those markets with high standards. Next, for our products, we don't want to have duplicate use of resources. Just now, for C911 of COMAC, for our plane, we hope that we won't have duplicate use of resources. So this is what we hope to see. That's it. Thank you. Thank President Mr. Peng. We are having great expectations for BASA. Next, let's welcome General Manager of Jiatai Avic, Mr. Wang Wang. We would like him to tell us how to be a good aero products provider and the benefits of BASA. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to attend this conference. We are a provider of the seats for the aviation industry. From a couple of time ago, we became a provider to Airbus, and we hope that we also will be a provider for Comeco. Mr. Yin just now mentioned that the Chinese industry should enter the global market and what are the possible solutions. In my view, the aviation industry in China is still developing compared with those in developed countries. First, the enterprises should construct their compliance risks system. We should establish airworthiness certifications system and quality control system. For all the systems, all the system need to be internationalized and gain recognition from the international counterparts. We hope that our products should not only be national, it should also be international. We have seen that the planes flying in China have a lot of their components produced internationally, and I believe that we will go international very soon, and this requires us to integrate ourselves to the civil aviation chain of the world. This requires us to nurture various kinds of talents. The speakers in early morning talked about the importance they attach to talent training. Some staff from our company have also attended relevant trainings programs seminars, and I hope BASA will be signed very soon. This will open a great prospect for the civil aviation market, and we hope our civil aviation certification systems and products will be able to gain recognition from the international counterparts. Thank Mr. Wang. He also expressed his hope for the development of the civil aviation industry. The three speakers just now all expressed this hope. This also brings in a requirement for the authorities. We should further speed up our negotiations and bring tangible benefits for the industry. And this brings us back to the theme of this conference. What are the benefits of BASA? Throughout discussion, I can say that will bring a lot of benefits. So this is the session for the speakers' introductions. Then let's move on to the Q&A part. There's a pad in front of us. I should have originally made it in a way that your questions can be shown on the tabloid, but it's not. It's experiencing a technical problem now, but I can deeply feel that the audience are all listening attentively. And I want to thank you for your time. As we can sit here today to discuss questions, this is due to our sincerity and passion in this industry. This also represents our sincerity in further cooperation and also our friendship. So I won't choose questions from my tabloid. If you have any questions, you can raise your hands.
好， 请那位先生。
Hello. Thank you for possibility to have a question. My name is Jan Friedrich and I'm from the Czech Republic. And I have a question. When do you think that practically BASA will be implemented here in China and in Europe?
Any panelist, or I will answer the question very quickly, very soon. Both sides have invested a lot of energy. Mr. Key and I working very hard with our teams, so not too distant the future. Any other question? Maybe in the back. I'd like to ask Mr. Ying or Mr. Wang. In 1991, we had a bilateral airworthiness agreement with the US, but it wasn't an equal. We certify FA's products, but FA products have additional conditions certifying Chinese products. So it wasn't on equal basis. Earlier, Mr. Wang mentioned that we are going to work again, negotiate again, and finish the agreement with US and the US and Europe. Would it change from the earlier version? Thank you. You are right. The current bilateral agreement with the US was not a reciprocal one. We full-heartedly accept certifying American products. The US only accept 23 types of the products. Through 3 years of negotiation, and even just last week, our team was in negotiation with the US FAA. We are hoping that the agreement to be signed by the end of this year. Both sides would agree that it's an open, inclusive, and entirely reciprocal, but I can't say more about the details right now. Okay, we have really reached the end of the time. Maybe allow one more question. Thank you. I'm from Shanghai Oxen Air Industry. I'd like to ask, BASA's agreement, after it's being signed, how would it help the Chinese manufacturers' products enter European market? Do we have to have an extra additional airworthiness certification? Let me answer. From the very beginning, we also collect ideas and suggestions. Our aim is to reduce redundancy and reduce the enterprise burden. So the bilateral agreement would be a comprehensive one. The products certified by the Chinese side will be recognized by the European partner based on an additional acceptance on a technical level. So would my European partners have a different understanding of this arrangement? in the interest of time, we can't take more of the time for the morning session. So let me conclude this session. As the moderator, I'd like to ask first to thank my panelists. They shared their experience and practices with you. And I also like to thank all the participants. All of us are very interested in air safety, hoping to establish a Chinese-European agreement. And your presence gives me confidence that we have good foundation for such bilateral agreement. And we are going to work very hard to complete the work as soon as possible. I also have a feeling as a moderator that we don't have enough time. In preparing for this part of the seminar or dialogue, we felt we didn't have enough time. So there's still some lack of communication. So if there's anything that's not done entirely to our satisfaction, I apologize here. And again, today, many of you still have questions, but we don't have time for that. So I apologize also. Through today's thematic discussion, I really feel that we are working against time. The next step is consultation and the final signing of the BASA agreement, and the further work on the annexes and the tip will require a lot of our time and energy. And I believe that both sides teams will work very hard. And with our courage, vision, practical efforts, we will finish our work in time, bring more benefits to the colleagues in the industry. I declare conclusion of this thematic discussion. Thank you again.